So it's, I think it's only 3 schools in our state. Samantha, one thing on that picture. The schools in North Carolina engineering, NC State, NC Charlotte, and there's a third one. ECU has some engineering. And they're gonna be smaller.
A&T.
A&T.
And that's a, yeah, we have a student
That's right.
graduated last year, one for
North
engineering.
Carolina A&T, that's in Greenport. That's right.
Yeah, yep.
I just want to welcome everybody for coming. We're going to get started in a few minutes. If you are online, if you could please scan the QR code that's on your screen and sign in virtually. It's very important that we have an accurate count of how many parents and students attend. Our federal dollars are attached to some of these events. So if you please scan that QR code and sign in if you're online. Thank you.
Let me know when you're ready to. Give me a look.
Okay.
Yesterday, I had 2. So today, we're going to do
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mark,
yeah, yeah.
for boys, and all of them, so it's there. So, yeah, I did all that. I did all that.
This is another one got like that one.
And I said, well, I'll take a quick nap. And then tomorrow. First one.
Right.
They didn't have to know that they were on the road. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we like, well, love it. District. Yeah.
How many?
Yeah.
We have, 9.
Yeah. We are increasing. Yeah. So we started, it used to be about 105.
Oh.
Yeah.
We are.
Already in the works. Yeah.
Just when you got here.
I know.
Those are motivated. More quick. Yeah. So that's what I'm that would be very modern, wouldn't it? Well. You can't. Yes, I call myself boring. Yeah, but the problem is.
Yeah. I think I can read it.
Yeah. I'd rather have a big old. I'll go with the tape first. Hello there.
Yeah. I should have done that when I died. Although, remember we came to our grade, I didn't know it was so
In ninth grade?
Yeah, you don't remember that? You thought it was tough, but the drive. Did I do that? Yeah, it was at that college, but then he
I know you were there. I don't think he.
wow, you know,
Weird. Good girl. Shut up.
the second child.
Oh, he's But we learned because we keep coming. Yeah, you, yeah.
All right, good evening and welcome to CFNC FAFSA and Scholarship Night. I'm Coach Doran. I'm the school counselor for those of you whose last names A through K.
And I'm Coach Huey, so I've got the rest of the alphabet, and we are glad that y'all are here tonight. So tonight we are not going to be doing most of the presenting. We are going to pass the microphone to our good friend from College Foundation of North Carolina, Amy Denton, who's going to be talking to us about scholarships and financial aid, and just like the picture shows, getting all the money that hopefully that you need for college. So before we pass the microphone. All right.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for those of you joining online tonight. I appreciate that. And certainly for those of you in person. I think I gave everyone the handout, the tips on paying for college. There may be a few times tonight that I reference a couple things on this handout. So I'm glad that you do have it in front of you. We'll go ahead and get started with the presentation to talk about what you may need to know about paying for college. I think I did hear a few of you say that you'd already done your FAFSA. Has anybody else already done your pre-application for federal student aid so far? Okay, good. Well, for the rest of you, that's perfectly okay. We're going to talk about that in the process of what it's going to be like as you file it. So we'll go ahead and progress to the next slide. Are you familiar with College Foundation of North Carolina, CF&C? We are a state resource in our state, of course, to provide information and resources for you all, for students and families, to guide you on whatever your next journey may be after high school. So we serve as a website, cfnc.org, a call center in Raleigh, so you can always call us for information. And we are a collaboration. The wheel didn't quite show up there on the presentation, but we work closely with the UNC system, the community college system, all the private schools in our state, DPI, the State Education Assistance Authority, and College Foundation, who I work for. And I am one of the field reps that you see there on the screen. There are only 7 of us in the state that work in regions of the state to provide information like this to students and families, okay? We're going to look at what we're going to talk about tonight. Some scholarship sources. We're going to talk about college costs, the different types of financial aid. Perhaps some of you may have to fill out 2 applications to be considered for financial aid. One of them is called the CSS profile, so we'll look at that a little bit more closely. We're going to wrap up the presentation tonight talking about RDS, the Residency Determination Service. How many of you have done that? Okay, we'll talk more details about that. And lastly, the month of October in North Carolina is called North Carolina Countdown to College, because we are pushing you, and your school counselors and other school personnel is pushing you to do the 3 things: FAFSA, RDS, and college applications. So we'll look at that closely. So we'll go ahead and get started with the scholarship sources. So there are 4 primary areas that you're going to look for scholarships. This is going to be beyond the FAFSA that you complete. The 4 primary areas here are listed on the screen, the local, right here in your community. Scholarships that may come in to Pasquotank County from this local area. And I'm sure Phil and Samantha, they post those on their websites or either share them via email. So make sure you look out for them. Probably the majority of them will not become available until the spring of the year. Is that right? So just, hold tight and look for those and make sure you're being considered for any types of scholarships from this local community. On a next level, the state level, the ones that we have on CFNC's website, and that's the shortcut, cfnc.org/scholarships. We only list about 110 to 115 right now on the site. By no means is that inclusive of every scholarship in the state that we can advertise, but we can only put, and we have vetted those scholarships because we are a nonprofit company, and so therefore we can only publish scholarships that are nonprofit related. And 3rd level, institutional scholarships, the ones right there at your schools that you're planning to go to. What types of scholarships do they have available? Take a look at their college websites if you've not done that already. Find out what they have available and how you can be considered for those scholarships. Some of you, depending upon the college, may automatically be in the running for these scholarships once you are accepted to that college. Others of you may have to apply separately. And then there are, of course, those departmental scholarships. Once you are in the engineering department, mathematics, education, nursing, science, whatever it may be, then, of course, that department or that school can consider you for scholarships within your academic major. And then on a more global level, look at the national databases of scholarships. Here are just a couple of examples, and I'm sure that Phil and Samantha may recommend others to you. But the biggest one that I push, and I would say if you're not on any of them, jump on the one for College Board. That's probably the largest database out there. We're all familiar with College Board. It's a very reputable site. College Board, is what houses the SAT if you registered and you took the SAT test. And of course, when we look at the CSS profile, They're also the folks that house the CSS profile. But these others are good too. Because they are national, remember that you probably would find that these scholarships are going to repeat from one database to the next to the next. So there probably would be not a huge need in getting on 3, 4, 5 of them. 2 probably would be a good number. You build your profile, and once the profile is established on you, and you ask a lot of questions, the database goes out to search to find any scholarships that are matched to your profile. And you'll get emails listing those scholarships within that email that was a fit for you. Okay? All right, we'll move on to the next. So now let's talk about college costs. There are 2 sets of costs. The first is the direct cost, tuition, fees, and if you're living on a college campus, room and board. If you're not going to be living on a college campus, then you will not see room and board. And parents, these are the fees and these are the costs that you will be billed for. Yes, sir.
Now, freshman year, is this something where they have to stay on campus? I think, is it freshman and sophomore? Or just freshman?
The question is, do freshmen have to stay on college campuses? They have to live on campus? Pretty much the majority of colleges probably have that residency requirement. It really just depends on the college and the size of the campus, size of parking availability, of whether you can choose to live on campus. But I probably would be safe to say that most colleges, your freshman year will ask you to live on campus. There are going to be some, Barton College, for one, where I went to school and I used to work, has a 3-year requirement. They have a freshman through junior residency requirement to live on campus. So it's going to vary from campus to campus. And then you'll see that there are indirect costs, books and supplies that quite often come out of your pocket. They won't always be associated with the fees and the direct cost. And then transportation, other expenses that you know that in colleges know, you will incur to send your student to college. So a college has to come up with a direct, indirect cost, and what they'll do is add it to the direct cost to come up with the total cost of attendance. You can receive financial aid up to the cost of attendance at that institution, and that's the good news. So not just up to the direct cost, the cost that you're going to be billed for by that institution, up to the entire cost of attendance. Right? And here are the types of financial aid. I've said it probably 10 to 15 times already tonight, financial aid. Any money that you get to support your college education will be considered financial aid. There are only 4 primary types. The first 2, grants and scholarships, are called gift aid. And why do we call those gift aid, by the way? Exactly. You don't pay those dollars back. In most circumstances, as long as the student is maintaining satisfactory academic progress, meeting the grades, having the number of courses to advance to the next level appropriately, then they will never have to lose those grants or have to pay them back, so to say. So those are the dollars, of course, we hope you can qualify for, but it really just depends on your applications for scholarships and your eligibility for grants through the FAFSA. And then the third type is employment, like work study, having a job on a college campus. Around your class schedule, you get paid for those dollars, and if your parents and your family's okay with it, you pocket the money, student, and use it as you wish. So work study opportunities are available for you. You will have to seek the jobs through the financial aid office. They will have lists of job opportunities on the campus. Whether it's the federal program you qualify or not, and many of you may not qualify for the federal work study opportunity, but colleges will have what we call institutional or regular work study. And you just have to find out where the jobs are and go seek them out, what area of campus you would want to work. Loans, of course, 4th type. We put those in a category called self-help. And we all know when we borrow loans, eventually what do we have to do? Pay them back. Exactly. Merit-based funding, we hope will come to you as a result of how well you've performed right here at school. Your academic performance, maybe some of you have a special talent, and we call that talent quite often. It could be athletic, dance, art, music, theater, whatever it could be. And you hope to continue that on that college campus, and you could be rewarded with a scholarship when you do that. So make sure you seek out those opportunities on your college campuses if you have a particular talent, so you can see if you can get some additional dollars to continue that. And then pretty much the opposite of merit-based aid would be need-based aid. Those are the dollars you get as a direct result of completing that FAFSA. Those are the dollars you get because the government tells you you qualify based on those dollars and those income, assets, investments that you have to report on the FAFSA, all that good tax information. So that's why they're considered need-based funds. Pell Grant is an example of that. And one of our federal student loans is considered need-based because the government pays the interest while the student's in college. If the student qualifies, it's called the subsidized federal direct loan. You'll see that listed there on your financial aid award notice. All right, we'll move on. So we're going to talk next about the two different application processes. So some of you may have to complete the CSS, as I mentioned earlier. Davidson in North Carolina, these are just the colleges in North Carolina that ask for it. Davidson, Duke, Elon, Chapel Hill, and Wake Forest. Anybody looking at those schools, perhaps? So CSS would be an additional financial aid form. It's open now. It's in line with the FAFSA, the same timing that you're doing the FAFSA. And there is the web address, the cssprofile.collegeboard.org, for you to complete it. This form will be way more detailed. We'll ask you a lot more questions than the FAFSA will ever ask you. And simply for the reason, if you just look at the 5 schools listed there, they're highly selective institutions. They just don't have the funds to give to the best of the best students. Why? Because you're all going to be the best of the best students when you go to those 5 schools. So they have to come up with some measure to determine, are there any need qualifications for the student to receive additional aid from their institution. Okay? All right, in the next slide, we're going to talk specifically about the FAFSA. So some of you have already done it, and you went to FAFSA.gov to complete it. The others of you, you will need to go there. It opened up October 1st. Every year, it will open up October 1 for you to complete for the next academic year that your student will be in college. Before you can complete the FAFSA, parent and student, if indeed the student is dependent and living in the home with a parent, will need what we call an FSA ID, a Federal Student Aid ID. It serves as your electronic signature. When it's time to submit the FAFSA, that's like step 6, only 7 parts of the FAFSA. When you get to step 6, it's going to ask for you to sign and submit. So they're asking you to put in your IDs. It's a username and password that you create. So some of you, I know you've already filed the FAFSA, you've got it, but others of you already have your IDs. So make sure you get it. Parents, by the way, if any of you had already had an ID because you had another student already go through this process to go to college, or you yourself were filling out a FAFSA for aid for your individual education purposes, parent, you're going to keep that same ID to identify yourself when you're submitting the FAFSA for this student now going to college. So you never have reason to get more than one ID. The parent will always keep their same, student will always keep their same ID. So keep it somewhere where you can access it from year to year. Every October, we're going to need it. All right? We'll move on to the next. So the next slide, we're going to talk about some reminders about the FAFSA. Specifically, we already mentioned that it opens up October 1. But make sure if you don't know this, it's going to probably be wise to check your college websites to see if they have any preferred financial aid deadlines. And quite often those financial aid deadlines, meaning they want you to submit that FAFSA by that particular time. They're gonna, not a whole lot of colleges have this, but some will. And sometimes they're in line with your choice of how you wish to apply. You know, some of you may have chosen to apply early action to college. A few of you, maybe some of your classmates could be thinking about early decision, which is the binding agreement. If you are accepted through an early decision application, you are obligating yourself to go to that institution and you turn down all other applications. And you can put up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA. That previous slide, and that's okay, we'll get back to it, that's fine.
Get somebody in.
That's okay. You can put up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA, and you do not have to wait until you're admitted in order to put those colleges on the FAFSA. Because think about it, a lot of you may be applying to colleges that you will not hear until later in your semester here. So if you were to apply early, you may not hear until December 1st or January 1st of your admissions decision, depending upon how you chose to apply. So keep that in mind. Add all the colleges that you want. If you are thinking about more than 10 colleges to apply to, you can put more than 10 on the FAFSA, but what you need to do is this: submit the first 10, log out, come back into the FAFSA at some point in time, or whenever you decide that maybe there's an 11th, 12th, 13th college that you are interested in, and remove 1, 2, 3 from the FAFSA and add that 11th, 12th, 13th and resubmit. So now those 3 new colleges are going to get your information just like the other 10 have already gotten. Right? All right, we can move on now. Thank you. And we won't spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but the point I want to make here, I will ask you this question because if depending upon your answer, we can go into more detail. Are all of you parents, do you have a biological or adoptive child in your household? Anybody not live with a parent? There will be cases though, and I'm sure you have some classmates that may be the case that they do not live with a parent. They could live with grandparents or other relatives or non-relatives. Only parents can file FAFSAs. These other non-relatives or relatives that have not adopted the student cannot file a FAFSA. So there are going to be situations that those students can go through, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But the one point I want to point out here, this last one, the divorced or separated household living. The student, if they're in a situation like this and parents are no longer together in the household, the student's going to list the parent that they live with more than 50% of the year. And if that parent has remarried, so there's a step parent in the household, the step parent will be included on the FAFSA as well. The parent that's not in the household doesn't put his or her information on the FAFSA. Right? But the main thing here is that's how you decide which of your parents, if there's parent 1 and parent 2, they're separated, they're divorced, who puts the information on the FAFSA. It does not matter any longer. Just keep this in mind in case you have classmates that question this. It doesn't matter any longer who files them on their taxes. I get this quite often. I think I've had it 2 or 3 times already this week, that parents have separated, divorced, and every other year, each parent files on the taxes, their taxes for that student. But the student primarily lives with the mother more than 50% of the year. The mother's going to be the one filing the child on the FAFSA, whether she claimed on taxes or not, doesn't matter. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Sometimes there will be situations in your household, we hope not, but there could be situations after the point of you filing the FAFSA and you're in college or you're getting ready to go to college. There could be change in employment status. You know, look what we've just come from COVID. Parents lost jobs, had a reduction in hours. whether it was COVID related or not, at any point in time, there's a death in the family. Parents separate, or it could be the other way around. A parent gets married, so it was only one parent, now there's two parents in the household. Could it be the reverse? Or medical expenses that are not covered by insurance, or this last situation that we kind of touched upon the last slide, students cannot obtain parent information. There is an option that students who do not live with parents, but they appear to be dependent, they can check an option that says unable to provide parent data. And then they must explain, just like any of the rest of you, if some of these situations were to happen in your household, you need to explain to the financial aid office what is going on. Because you can't document this on a FAFSA. The FAFSA, the federal government could care less about these situations, but the colleges will care. They can adjust your eligibility for aid based on what's going on in your household. So on the next slide, I'm going to point out something to you. You probably already knew this, especially if you've already filed your FAFSA. When you file your information regarding taxes, parent and student, if students work and have reason to file taxes, then they're going to have to do the same information here as this screen that shows parent tax filing status. It's going to be based on 2 years ago taxes. So if you guys are going to be in college in the fall of 2023, you're basing your financial information on 21 tax data. So it's always 2 years prior to the year of enrollment. So I'm going to quiz you, okay? If you're going to be in college in the fall of 2025 and spring of 26, what year tax data do you put on the FAFSA? 23. Very good. Very good. You got it. So that's 2 years prior to then that fall of 2025. So that's going to be the year that you put on the FAFSA. Make sure, by the way, that you are clicking on the right year FAFSA when you're going into the. I've already had parents and students tell me already this year, prior to October, I've already done the FAFSA. I'm good. I'm like, well, Pumpkin, you just got good experience. But you didn't fill out the right year. You know, you're going to be in college in the year 2023, 24. They filled out 22, 23. That's the year they're still in high school. That's not the year they need to complete the FAFSA. So it's always going to be the school year that you will be in college. So when you get to this point, if you answer a couple of questions correctly, the way that the government wants you to answer, you will be able to link to the IRS to retrieve your tax information and import it, bring it over back to the FAFSA, and it's going to fill in most of those financial fields for you. Did you guys do this? Anybody do this? And it worked okay?
We did. Yeah, we couldn't get it work. We did manual, but I
Gotcha.
got an email to go back.
Right. If you do choose to do it manually, that's okay. But the government and the colleges will continue to remind you, go back to the IRS, to this section of the FAFSA and link to the IRS. If for some reason you don't do the linking, and it could be that you're not even eligible, so you would have to manually answer, then of course, you have the chance of being selected for verification by the college. It's not a horrible process. It's just they know you didn't link. And they're going to want to know why. If you were a candidate to link, why didn't you link? The picky part of why some families can't link is because when you're asked about 2 more questions to identify who you are with the IRS, they're going to ask for like address. Your address from your 21 taxes. And if for some reason you abbreviated, let's just make this up, drive on your taxes, but you spell it out when you enter it on the FAFSA side, there will not be a match. The government is that picky. So it has to be identical, even everything, identical to how exactly you entered it on your tax information. That will be usually a number one reason why there's not a match. Obviously, if you transpose numbers or social security numbers or anything like that, that's going to be another reason why it didn't match. Okay. But nonetheless, this is where you enter that tax information. When you sign and submit, that's step 6. You're going to quickly advance to a step 7, and that's going to be on the next slide, to get a confirmation. And the result of your FAFSA is this expected family contribution. When you initially submit the FAFSA, you're only going to get an estimated EFC because it hasn't had its chance yet to be processed behind the scenes with all the government folks to say, yeah, you've done it right. So the EFC, this shows zeros. It's going to be a measure from zeros to $999,999. Now, you obviously hope your EFC is not that high. Well, you could hope that it's that high. That means you got a lot of money in the household. But you would hope that perhaps it's on the lower end. I will tell you this. This is the measure. This is the index of how the government determines whether you qualify for those grants, federal or state grants. There are a couple federal grants, Pell Grant, remember we talked about? And in North Carolina, we only have 4 state grants. The threshold of your EFC does have to be fairly small for you to qualify for the federal grant programs. If your threshold is a little bit higher, and I'm talking about zeros to about $6,000, $6,500, you would qualify for federal funding. If it's anywhere higher than that, upwards to about a 15 or 16,000, you then may qualify for state grant funding. But if it's going to be beyond 15, 16,000, when you see here your EFC, you will not qualify usually for either federal or state grant funding.
15, 16,000 what?
Dollars. It's dollars.
Like a month, year? What?
No, it's based on a year, based on your tax information. It's not the dollar amount you have to pull out of pocket to pay the college. It's not the dollar amount the college is going to bill you. It is simply the index that the government has to use with all of that data you put on the FAFSA that goes into a federal formula, and each piece of the data carries a different weight. The equal to, there has to be some way for the government to determine who's going to qualify for those federal fundings or not, and state. This is the measure. So it is confusing for families sometimes because they think, oh, that's my expected family contribution. That's what I'm going to have to pay. No, it is what the government is saying you should be able to have sitting around somewhere to be able to afford your child's education. But it's not going to be a dollar amount you pay to the college. The EFC, by the way, maybe next year or definitely by the 25-26 year is going away. It will no longer be called EFC. It's going to have a different name, wouldn't you know it? And it's going to be called an index. I think it's like SAI, Student Aid Index. I don't remember exactly what it's going to be, but you will see changes coming to the FAFSA very soon. Either 24-25 year or 25-26. I can't remember which year it is. Have y'all heard about that too? Yeah. And there are going to be different, several questions are going to be changed. Several measures in which they currently ask you now will not be asked about in the future. The whole point, the government is continuing to try to simplify this form. And they're trying to simplify the number of questions that you're being asked to determine can you qualify for aid. Okay? Quite often, this index here, this EFC, is what colleges use to look at to determine do you qualify for any institutional grant funding. Because remember, if it has a need attachment to it, a need-based attachment, it's going to have everything to do with money, everything to do with FAFSA, which is totally different from merit funding, okay? Merit and need are two totally different things. All right, we'll go to the next slide. I just highlighted that. Okay, so now we're gonna wrap up, talking about the residency determination service and countdown to college. So RDS is fairly new to our state, if you can call 6, 7, 8 years ago new. We are the only state in the nation that has a centralized way of determining whether a student is resident of our state. It's a part of this 3-step process. This is what we're doing this month to push families to get to complete RDS, FAFSA, and apps. And we'll go to the next slide. We need to know whether you're a resident of our state. If you plan to attend one of our colleges, we have 111 in North Carolina. So if you plan to attend a North Carolina college, we need to know, especially if you're planning to attend a public college or university, that those colleges only charge you for in-state tuition, if indeed you're a resident, because there is an out-of-state charge. By default, all students are classified out of state until you do this to prove that you are an in-state resident. And of course, if you are an in-state resident, if you're eligible, we'll consider you for the 4 state grants that we have in North Carolina. So it's a twofold process, tuition and grant eligibility. And we can go to the next slide. On this handout, it does tell you on the back side, this ncresidency.org. It is a behind-the-scenes website for College Foundation. So the student will need to log in with their cfnc.org account. And this is the reason why every student in our state has to have a CFNC account, on top of applying to college, sending transcripts, taking career assessments, that type of thing. So you can also find it under the apply section of CFNC. We have plan, apply, pay, and save. If you go to the apply section or anywhere else you see residency, click it, you're going to go there. You will see that every college application in North Carolina has a field that's asking you for your RCN, your residency certification number. So when you complete the residency, you get a status and you get a number. That's the number that you're going to need to complete those apps. The good news is, if you do this first, when you're then completing applications that will ask you to stay on CFNC, many of you are going to have to apply via Common App or college website portals. You won't stay on CFNC to complete all of your applications. But for those of you that do, we'll know that you've already done RDS. So we'll automatically populate that RCN field with your number because, again, we're the same site. We talk to each other. So we'll populate that field for you. You can always log back into your residency interview and get your number. If you've not done this yet, we highly recommend that parents be the one driving the computer, or if you're not comfortable driving, you let your student do it, but you sit right here beside your student. The majority of the questions are going to be about parents, because the law says the residency for a student is determined by where the parent's domicile is. So that's why parents are going to have to be asked about car registration, tax information, what's your driver's license number, other things to attach you to our state to show that you are a resident. Anybody have questions about that, or any questions that may come up from online? Sometimes that tends to draw questions. Anybody military? Yeah. So military families, you will have drop-down questions. By virtue of the way you answered a previous question, you're going to be asked a couple more questions. And by the way you answer those, you're going to be asked a couple more questions. So if by chance, especially the military families or anyone else, gets an out-of-state status, and you've lived here all your life, or you've claimed residency in our state for whatever length of time, you can go through what we call a reconsideration process or an appeal. You always start with reconsideration. And what that means is you're going to be assigned to actually a human in Raleigh at CFNC's RDS call center. And that person will help you and ask you to turn in certain types of documents to show proof of your residency in North Carolina. Like, had a family last night, military, say that she had to go through this and she was asked for like utility bills, cell phone bill, anything that was attaching them to North Carolina. And there's also, and this tends to help our military families, a 5-year rule. So if students were to get an out-of-state status, but the student has been attending one of our North Carolina schools for 5 consecutive years, they can provide proof of a transcript and some other documentation to show that they've lived here for 5 years in a row.
It's only 5.
Only 5. And then they could be given that in-state status. It's only 5 if prior to the 5, they lived in another state. So the 5 is the help. But the North Carolina residency rule is only 12 months. But in this case of residency, that doesn't automatically make a family in-state just because the parents lived here for the past 12 months. There has to be other proof that there is connections to our state. So walk through it. If you have questions, you can always call our RDS call center to get the help. And we'll move to the next slide. And I think this is wrapping up with the countdown to college. The month of October, we're in week 2. We're halfway through week 2. Tomorrow night, as you see here, week 2, we're concentrating on FAFSA and RDS. At 6 o'clock, we are having a webinar. So if you are interested in attending to get more information about financial aid, a lot of what I've talked about tonight, and some more details about RDS, you can register to attend the 6 o'clock meeting tomorrow night. Every Tuesday and Thursday, that's why those Tuesday and Thursday dates are highlighted red there on the calendar. We'll have different types of webinars on the various focus of each week. Next week is the big week, college application week. And I think maybe you were handed a list of colleges that waive the fees next week. Very good. We have 100 of our 111 colleges waiving the fees. Of course, that helps when you have 58 community colleges that automatically waive year-round. A lot of our smaller private schools waive year-round. Remember, if you are applying early action to some colleges, they may have a deadline of October 15th. I don't know what they all are. So you can't wait until Monday, the 17th, to apply. Other colleges have early action deadlines of November 1st. So you could be good for that. Our big name colleges, NC State, Chapel Hill, UNC Charlotte, UNC Wilmington, Greensboro, they don't waive fees. We are fortunate this year, as you see on the list, that Davidson, Elon, they're waiving fees. ECU is waiving fees. All of our HBCU campuses, our historically black college universities, they're going to waive fees. Even, obviously, they're the part of the UNC system, they're going to be waiving fees. So go out to cfnc.org and C2C to see more information about what we're doing. And we've got another 2 good weeks. That 4th week, we focus on, I applied, now what? You've told me to do all these things. What's going to happen now? What do I sit and wait for? So we kind of focus on how to follow up and what are you going to expect after you've done college apps, FAFSA and RDS. What do you do now? So that's week 4. We've got those 2 webinars on Tuesday and Thursday. And lastly, you can always feel welcome to follow us on any of our social media sites. That's the next slide, I believe. Pardon me. We've already pretty much talked about this, so you can advance to the last slide. College Foundation, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. YouTube is where we put all of our recorded webinars, previous sessions and things that we've hosted. They're going to be there if you'd like to go out to search for our College Foundation page and find us. And I am the last slide on Instagram and Facebook at Amy@CFNC if you wanted to follow me. Again, play with our website, Parents, you don't have to have a login to go to CFNC to look around. And you can always call us at our call centers if you had questions about anything related to what I talked about tonight. I will point out this, the only piece of information on this handout on the back side under planning timeline, if you come down to the fourth bullet point where it talks about the fsaid.ed.gov, that web address is no longer valid. You'll get your ID, for those of you that haven't already done your FAFSA, directly on the FAFSA.gov site, or you'll be directed to studentaid.gov. Our federal government has had multiple little addresses, finaid.org, studentaid.gov, FSA, FAFSA.gov. All of these little small websites we've had over the years are going away. And everybody, the federal government is now going to require that everybody go to studentaid.gov. So probably by next year, you won't have the FAFSA.gov site. Right now, you're being redirected. If you notice that when you go there, your URL on the top, you're going to be going to studentaid.gov. So some of these will no longer be valid. All right, any questions or any thoughts from you all in anything online? If they've popped up in chat, we
Popped up
can.
in chat right here.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. And if not, I'm going to turn it back over for your wonderful school folks here to share some information with you. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for letting me be here.
Thank you for coming out. Lots of information. It's great to hear every year. Thank you, Amy. Just a few reminders as we are approaching Countdown to College and free application week next week. It's the 17th through 21st. We again are going to push you to complete your residency. So when you go to submit your applications, your residency is already there. The scholarships we talked about, here at NEAT, we use Naviance. So there's a whole scholarship portal in Naviance. We are continuously updating that information. There's some scholarships that we'll post that are national that may be open now, but mostly what is in Naviance is going to be the local scholarships that will open up in the spring. You can go in and take a look now and see the ones that are listed, but for the most part, the applications for those are going to be from last year, and we'll update them again when we get the new applications in the springtime. Next week in advisory, a reminder, seniors, October 19th, Wednesday is a mandatory advisory day. But we will also be sending out some information about virtual college visits that will happen during advisory. And so I would encourage you to use those as some of your pick 6 days to come in, see the college presentations virtually, schedule a time to meet with Coach Huey and I so we can look at your applications before you start submitting them next week.
Yeah, so for CFNC, you can go ahead and already have the application completed, and then come Monday when the application week goes live, you can just go ahead and hit that submit button, and you can actually go ahead and even submit your transcript, your high school transcript electronically through there as well. Many of y'all taking the dual enrollment courses. Most of the North Carolina colleges do not require you to submit like your COA or ECSU transcripts at this time. That's usually like towards the end of the school year when you're all done with your classes, then they have to have them, of course, to transfer them as college credit, but for the application process, they will accept them from us. One thing, if I could just put the exclamation mark on what Amy said, is as far as like the colleges go, after you apply, a lot of times, or once you're admitted, a lot of times they will send separate information about like scholarship portals. I know ECU does, COA, they have great resources there. So if you can get those applications in early, and then a lot of times there's tons of resources through the college websites. So, all right. Yeah, any other last minute questions or anything before we wrap it up for tonight?
So if you have to scan the QR code and give us feedback, it's really critical so we can always enhance and improve our program.
Yeah, we definitely value your feedback, and we do read it and make adjustments too. So if you can scan that QR code and give us some feedback, that would be much appreciated. Yeah, other than that, though, thank y'all for coming, and we'll all hang out for a few minutes if you have like individual questions or anything like that. Thank you.
Good luck.
Not necessarily.